Hi there folks, my name is Ben, and on this channel I like to talk about tech. And in particular, I like to do tutorials to help developers and programmers. And every now and then, like in this video, I like to make some twaddle. Skits, rants, opinion pieces, advice pieces, stuff that's just different than my usual stuff. And just over 2 years ago, when I started this channel, I vowed to make special celebration videos at certain subscriber count milestones. To start with, it was every 100 subs until we hit the 1,000 mark. And now it's every 1,000 subscribers, I create one of these very special videos. These special celebration videos give me the opportunity to say a proper thank you to you all. Thank you for supporting me and helping me grow this channel. So in this video, I want to finally cover a topic that I've wanted to talk about for ages. And I personally believe that this topic is really, really crucial for everyone to hear and digest, especially folks like myself that are part of the tech industry, that don't often get the opportunity to flex their presentation skills. In this video, I want to give you a bunch of useful and practical tips that you can use and implement today to help you become a better presenter. If followed, these tips will enhance even the dullest of presentations and enable your audience to truly and deeply engage with the topic and get the most out of the experience. So, let's dive in. Right, before we begin, let me just address the elephant in the room. 3,000 subscribers! Oh, I feel sick. I shouldn't have been spinning. That's not good. I'm too old for this crap. I feel gross. Let me quickly take this opportunity to say a massive, massive thank you to you all. Thank you for the constant love and support that you give me and the growth of this channel. As I always try and say, the numbers are not what matter for me. Yes, they are a great and often fun metric for me to see visually if what I'm making is impactful and of value to people. And that's why I always celebrate these milestones. But for me, this channel has always been about helping people and giving back to the community that has given me so much. So truly and deeply from my heart, thank you to you all. In fact, funnily enough, I was actually live streaming the moment that we hit the 3,000 milestone. Let's take a look. Subscribed. Ed, have you deployed your family? Ed, let's go over to the screen. Wait, we've hit it. Oh no, I gotta wait. I had something ready. Let's go. Hey Haley, I think you're the. I made a hat. We made it! 3K, baby! I don't know what's happening. And of course, on that note, if you enjoy what I do here on this channel, consider hitting that subscribe button. And of course, if you like this video, give that thumbs up icon a little tickle. Right, let's get into the topic at hand. In the following minutes of this video, I'm gonna give you a bunch of tips to help you become a better presenter. It doesn't matter at all what your presentation topic or content is about. These tips can be applied to every situation where you are going in front of an audience to say something, both online in a video conference or offline, in-person presentations. Before I start talking about these tips, it's really important to say that I am not a presentation expert. I don't have some degree in the science or psychology behind these presentations and how best to do them. What I do have, however, is a wealth of experience of actually doing presentations, being a presenter in front of audiences. And I have a background in drama and theatre studies, where I was a actor on the stage performing for an audience. What I'm trying to say is that I've been on stage many, many times, and the list of tips you're about to hear is my own compiled collection of things that I've learned throughout my experience. Whether it's things that I've tried myself, learnt from and refined, or things that I've actually been taught by teachers and theatre professionals. And I think it's important to say why I'm making this video, why help other people become better presenters. And I'm making it because I honestly believe that everybody has a story to tell, or something useful or interesting or educational to share. But sometimes we just need a little help to tell that story in the right way so that people listen and get some value from it. Because only when we really listen and understand one another can we properly work together. Is that too cheesy? Nah, it's fine. So the ultimate goal of this video is to make it as easy as possible for other people to listen to what you have to say. Lastly, before I hit tip 1, here's sort of tip 0. And it's really a question of, why are you doing a presentation? In my humble opinion, I believe that before you do it, you should check that your presentation is at least one of two things. Either your presentation is going to be educational. That means that people will learn something from it. They will actively gain value from the content itself, or that your presentation is entertaining, meaning that people will gain value from the experience of being in the audience. The ultimate presentation is both of these things, educational and entertaining. And the common theme there is people getting value from your presentation. If your presentation is neither of those things, then in my opinion, it should not be a presentation. As a presenter, I believe it's your job to make sure that your audience is getting value from the thing that you are doing. The audience is giving you their precious time, patience, and attention. You should not waste their time or your own with something that is not educational or entertaining. Right then, with that out of the way, let's get into these tips. These come in no particular order. Each one is important in its own right, and your objective should be to utilize as many of these together as possible. These tips can and should be applied in both online presentations and in-person presentations. Never ever turn your back on your audience. This one's probably not a super obvious one and comes more from a sort of stage presence point of view. The way we humans communicate best is face to face, looking at each other. We can see each other as we're talking, we can see emotions, change in faces, hidden sort of visual cues, and we can also read each other's lips as we're talking. If you're in front of an audience, you're looking at them and they're looking at you. And as you're presenting, you're talking, you turn your back and you keep talking. Maybe you're looking at some slides on the back wall or a TV over there. You've made a break in that sort of connection. If you're creating a scenario where your audience is truly engaged and enjoying what you're saying, and you turn your back on them, you're breaking that connection. Even for a second, there's a break. And what you had before is not what you have after. Turning your back feels amateurish. And all of the sort of extra things that they're seeing in terms of your face and body language is also getting lost in translation when you turn your back. From back in my theatre times, it was one of the biggest no-nos. You never turn your back. So if I'm on the stage, I want to position myself, my body is facing towards the audience and they're looking at me. At worst, maybe I want to interact with another actor on the stage here or another presenter, or just turn in this direction. I keep my body still open. I still keep it open, so I'm not turning my back. I keep it open, but turned, and they can still see my facial expressions, my emotions, and still see my lips and how I'm talking, how I'm moving. I'm not turning my back to them so they can't see any of that. This is a really simple, straightforward tip, but often hard to implement. Presenters will often have their slides behind them on some sort of screen that the audience is seeing as well. And presenters will try and turn to the slides and gesture to things on the screen, but in turning to look at the screen themselves, they've turned their back to the audience, breaking that connection and making it look sort of amateurish. It's also extremely important to keep in mind if you're somebody that moves on stage. If I'm moving around here as I'm talking, presenting, see how I'm turning? I'm constantly turning the opposite direction to make sure that I'm still forward facing to the audience, and that's fine. But at one point, if I do this and I turn the wrong way, to keep my movement going, I'm turning my back to the audience every now and then. So if you're somebody that moves on stage, which is okay if done in the right way, just make sure that as you're moving, you never turn your back to the audience, and instead you constantly turn and face the open side. Don't look at your slides as they're being presented to the audience. Something that I alluded to back in tip 1 about not turning your back on the audience is not turning around to look at the slides that are on the screen. Often people will do this to remind themselves where they're up to in their presentation, or as a cue of what to say next. And sometimes in the really, really worst case scenario, please don't ever do this, they will read from their slides on screen, word for word. The audience can already see it. Some words are on screen, they're like, and the cat jumped over the fox. Reading it word for word, which is entirely useless and a waste of your time and the audience's time. Here's something quick to remember. If you need to look at the contents on your slide, you have not rehearsed enough. And this is like an added extra little tip as part of this, is to rehearse. Rehearse your presentation over and over again. The weeks coming up to when you're doing your presentation, rehearse it. By rehearsing it over and over again, not only do you get to stand up and sort of pretend in your sort of mind space that you have an audience in front of you, see how it feels to move around as you're doing your presentation, but you also get to see your slides in a safe space. You get to see which slide follows what the progression of your story is. You get to see and feel if the story is disjointed, if certain slides should be moved around and in different places. And of course you get to practice timing and seeing the actual slide contents themselves and matching what you're going to say to the slides itself. Of course, you can gesture to things on your slides. Important pieces of information. Maybe use a laser pointer to highlight that. But you should never need to look at your slides in order for you to remind yourself or to gain sort of information in that moment. If you do, then you haven't rehearsed it enough. Make sure the person at the back of the audience can hear you. This is a really important tip. It's about volume. Imagine you have a huge presentation space. You've got a big audience that stretches back many rows. Now, imagine you haven't got a microphone or some sort of sound amplification system. You need to make sure that the person in the back row, furthest away from you, can still hear you. It absolutely does not mean that you need to shout or yell, but it does mean that you need to project what you are saying. When I'm talking normally to people, I sort of talk like this. You might not be able to hear it because of the microphone, but I'm sort of not using my diaphragm. I'm not using any sort of energy or power to talk. I'm talking normally like I'd talk to somebody next to me. Maybe even worse, I might turn my head sort of down as I present, or sort of not put my head up to the audience, and everything that I'm saying is getting lost down here. It's quieter and it's down and it's away from the audience. The person at the back of the hall is not going to hear it. However, when you present, you want to use, and again, apologies about this, I'm not any sort of medical professional, but you want to use your diaphragm. You want to use some of the power in here. You can notice the difference. If you're trying to talk to somebody in the back, I'm not yelling, but I'm trying to talk to somebody in the back, I put a bit more effort into it. That's me using my diaphragm to help me project. Whereas if I talk normally at a normal sort of level, it's still a decent sort of volume, but I'm not projecting it. I'm sort of just talking. And again, not putting my head down where this conversation, in fact, it's probably going to be louder because the microphone's down here, but I'm not putting my head down, letting it get lost down here. I'm putting my head to the audience. I'm panning around the room, you know, like one of those electric fans that sort of turns like that, so that everybody can get some of my projection that I'm sort of telling them, the volume, you know, from the diaphragm. I hope that makes sense. Not only should you use volume so that everybody can hear what you're saying, of course, that's sort of the obvious one, but you can use different volume in your presentation to help sort of change the flow, the speed, the pace, emphasize certain points. Not only should you strive to have volume so that everybody in the audience can hear you, but if you do indeed have a sort of space that they can hear you even if you talk at a normal level, or if you have a microphone system so they can hear you regardless of what volume you can talk, then you can use volume to add power, to add emphasis, to add a change of pace and flow and snaps to your presentation. It's perfectly fine for me to project and talk with my diaphragm at one sort of volume level here. Everybody can hear me, that's fine, and that's good. But I can also change the level of my volume in order to change maybe the pace or the action or the pop of my presentation. I can talk quietly, to draw the audience in, to bring them interested in what I'm about to say. And I can smack, I can slam, I can talk louder to get points of sort of panic or desperation or interest or energy into the talk. Volume can be used as a tool to make your presentation better. Use speed and pauses to your advantage. To start with, on the topic of speed, presenters, perhaps if they're nervous, will talk really, really fast, and they'll try and get all of the information out in order to, first of all, make sure they haven't forgot something that they've practiced and got in their mind, but also perhaps to get off the stage as fast as possible. But I implore you, instead of talking like this at this speed, which nobody can possibly keep up on, and the audience will only sort of grab the little tiny snippets from, I implore you to slow down. And this is something that I still practice and struggle with myself. I'm still trying to get that sweet spot and get it right with speed. Remember, if you're talking fast on stage, the audience is likely only hearing what you have to say for the first and only time. So if you talk fast and they miss certain bits, then that context is gone, that information has been lost. Whereas if you talk slower than you would, the audience is going to hear every word that you have to say. The power, the connotation, the context to everything you're going to have to say, they're going to hear it and consume it and take it in and understand it. So that's the first part of the tip. Slow down. I guarantee it will make your presentations better. And if you want to find out if, like me, you are a fast talker, film yourself with your mobile phone. Rehearse, practice something, and see how you'd normally do it, if it's fast and if you need to change it down a notch. Now, after you've managed to sort of slow yourself down, where normal humans can understand the sentences and all of the words that you're saying, you can start to use speed and pauses like volume to your advantage. You can change the speed that you're talking and that you're delivering your words to add different emphasis or power or sort of passion to your points. So for example, if I wanted to make a really powerful statement, I can slow right down. Whereas if I want to perhaps drive some panic or urgency to the audience, I can speed right up. I can say sort of things that are quick and sharp, make them sort of feel that energy within themselves. I'm using speed to my advantage. And the other thing is pauses. People, including myself, find pauses or the lack of sort of interaction really awkward. And it's hard to get over, but once you get over the awkwardness, you can use the lack of information, the lack of communication as a powerful tool. The pause is a really powerful tool. A pause helps you frame some idea or topic, something that you've just said, and isolate it from everything else to show how important it is. For example, if I'm talking about topic A, I can say topic A has this feature. This feature is groundbreaking. It's game-changing. Now, the pause is there, again, isolated those elements and showed how important they were. Pauses should be delivered confidently. Maybe look at your audience as you're pausing. You're not pausing because you've forgotten what you're saying. You're not going, that's sort of an awkward, amateurish pause. But if you're pausing and looking around the room, driving home this point, you know what you've just said is important. You need everyone else to know how important it is. A pause is a powerful tool. Audience interaction is your friend. Now, this is one of my favorites, and I really try and endeavor to use some sort of audience interaction in most of my presentations. Not only does it take sort of the pressure pedal off of me and sort of maybe sometimes aims it at the audience, but it's also a fun way to see if who I'm talking to is the right people. Maybe find out their level of understanding. Maybe find out a little bit about their experience in this sort of topic. And armed with the information about their context and their experiences, maybe I alter my approach, how I sort of tell the information, which bits I really sort of drive in on and focus on, and which bits I worry about less. A nice, easy way to do audience interaction, and one that I often use, is the hands up thing, where you poll the audience and ask them to raise their hands if da 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 da. For example, in my recent DroidCon talk, I was talking about compose. So I first of all began by saying, hey, who's actually used compose? Raise your hand if you use compose.
Second one, more on topic. Raise your hands if you have used or played with Jetpack Compose already? Okay, yeah, good. It's like
Nice.
it's the key term for this droid gun. Okay, last one, and I want you to be really honest. Raise your hands if you prefer using Compose to the old XML ways. Raise those hands. Okay, amazing. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Just have a look around. Look how many hands there are. Put a mental pin in this because we're coming back to this later. All right, you can relax.
And with this method of interaction, it requires so little from the audience that they actually participate. If you ask the audience something more stressful, could somebody stand up and tell me ABC? Or, hey, you, can you tell me, where you're from? You might have a harder time. Whereas currently they're a pack, they're an anonymous pack, and hand raising doesn't do anything. It's literally a slight movement for them, and often they're going to be a collective of not just them on their own. You're not isolating them. So hands up, polling the audience is both easy for you to implement, and you can have a bunch of those if questions ready to go, and it's less stressful for your audience. You're not isolating them, you're not making anyone feel uncomfortable. Of course, there's lots of different ways for you to interact with your audience whilst you're presenting to them, but that is my favorite method. Not only do you get to learn a little bit about them, get them actively involved in your presentation, maybe you're starting to lose some of the audience's attention and concentration, and asking a question where they have to sort of wake up and raise a hand or actively understand and listen to what you're saying can often, if they're diverging from attention, bring them right back on track. So it's a useful tool for that as well. As a rule of thumb, if you're making audience interaction easy to participate, not awkward, not uncomfortable, something simple where everybody can get involved, everybody can get involved with the audience interaction, and you're, learning something, or they're learning something, or it's just sort of entertaining audience interaction, then that's good. And good audience interaction can also be used as a tool to re-engage people that perhaps were lacking in concentration or sort of disappearing off elsewhere. Tell them, and tell them again. Now, this is a bit of a strange one, but when I heard this for the first time, it really changed my way of thinking for presentations. Tell them, and tell them again simply means that if you have a point or a statement or something important for them to learn, you should not just say it once in your presentation. You should say it once, maybe say it again a couple of slides later, and maybe say it again and again a couple of slides later. Now, I'm not asking you to go on stage and say, here's my point, here's my point, here's my point. But what I am asking you to say is to make sure that your presentation is built in a way that you can constantly refer back to that point and teach them and tell the audience that point again. Again, not at all a psychologist, but if you hear something once for the first time, there is a high probability that you'll hear it and possibly forget it very soon afterwards. But if you hear something once, and then within the context of the next 30 or so minutes, hear it again, and again, and again, it's less likely that you're going to forget that important point. So very simple one. Tell them, and tell them again. If you have an important point, an individual information statement, don't just say it or tell it once. Smile and make eye contact. Now, we're getting a little bit squishy here with the tips, but it makes such a massive, vast difference when you are on stage and you are smiling, perhaps, or looking at least like you're enjoying yourself or having a good time, or this presentation experience is not a painful, suffering endeavor. If you're looking like you're having a good time, it's infectious. The audience will also absorb some of that. They'll be having a good time because you're having a good time. Eye contact is really important. A presentation is not just you standing in front of a bunch of empty chairs. There's an audience there for a reason. You can connect with them. You can make eye contact with a couple of them. You can engage with that audience, with those members of the audience where you couldn't if those were empty chairs. You should endeavor to try and make eye contact with many members of the audience. Don't just sort of stare at one poor individual member of the audience, but instead move your eye contact around from person A to person B and just keep moving it between different audience members. Eye contact is really interesting. It makes this sort of personal connection. It makes that audience member feel as though they are seen and they are an actual human being in your audience. It creates this sort of intimate bond where maybe if they are sort of losing concentration a little bit, they see you sort of making direct eye contact with them. They're back and they're listening. They're like, yes, I'm listening. This is really, really interesting. It's a strange psychological thing, and again, not a psychologist, but try making eye contact with lots of members of the audience. It's really quite a game-changing thing. And back to the point about smiling, it basically just means that you should look as though you are having a good time on stage. Maybe you're not, maybe it's terrifying for you, but with practice, it will get easier, I guarantee it. But if you're looking like you're having fun, or it's very sort of easy or fluid for you, the audience is gonna feel more at ease. They're not gonna be so sort of thinking like, uh-oh, was that a mistake? Or like, oh, I'm sort of, you know, it looks a bit nervous, I'm sort of gonna sort of be a bit nervous myself. If you're at ease, the audience is gonna feel more at ease and be more sort of susceptible to actually the information and the contents of your presentation, as opposed to sort of worrying about you and how you're doing. Don't be afraid as well to show emotion and, like, for example, laugh in your presentation. If you do, it shows that you are a human and it brings that sort of connection right back. It shows that you're having a good time. You're not taking yourself too seriously. If you make a mistake, laugh it off. If you've put a terrible pun that no one else laughs at in your presentation, laugh at it, enjoy it. So tip 7, smile because it's infectious. Laugh and enjoy your time on stage if you can. That comes through practice and rehearsal and just doing it as often as you can. And eye contact to make personal connection with the audience members and make them feel like they're there and they're valued and they're actually human, as opposed to just a blank canvas that you're yelling into the void at. Movement. Movement is a really interesting one, and I've not said, you know, don't be static or, you know, don't move too much, because I think there's a happy medium somewhere, and it really depends on the kind of stage that you're on and the kind of presentation that you're giving. To start with, let's talk about movement of your upper body. I highly encourage that you use movement in your upper body. You can use your hands to gesture things, to drive home points, to give the audience some idea. You can use your head to move around the room and look at different members of the audience. What I'm saying is your upper body shouldn't be static. If you can, practice using your hands to drive home points. Now, the hands don't have to be linked to things you've just said. For example, I just said, the hands don't have to be linked to the things you just said, and I was constantly moving my hands, and I was gesturing the whole time. These gestures, they're not super important. They have no matching to the words that I said, but I'm doing it. Now, it doesn't mean that you should just constantly move your hands like this, because there's no benefit there. But if you use the rhythm that you're talking about to help move your hands and gesture in that way, then that's a really powerful thing. If you're ever sort of giving a point to the audience, if you're ever handing them information, then maybe you can do a gesture as though I'm handing things to you. If you need to gesture to yourself or to them, the audience, you can just use very simple movements to make that possible. It's more engaging, it's more interactive, and it's more visually stimulating to the audience. Whereas if you were standing completely static and still, sure, the information's going to come across fine, but there's nothing sort of assisting the words that you're saying. There's nothing visual to look at. It's very static and still, and possibly a little bit boring. Now, the second half of movement is actually your position on stage and moving, and I have a rule of thumb for this. If I'm on a stage that has lots of people and it's a really, really big space, then I will do more movement of my position on stage, right? Whereas if I'm in a small venue with a small, intimate audience, I will try and stay at the same position on the stage, only doing sort of small forward and backward movements. Let me give you a little example. You'll notice that I'll probably use my hands the entire time. That's the upper body part. But the movement on stage, if this is me on my stage, and let's imagine first of all that there is a big, massive audience, it's a big hall, there's lots of stage to move around on. As I'm presenting, again, tip 1, I won't turn my back to the audience, but I'll be sort of moving. And I won't be moving fast, because if you're moving really fast, it's hard for the audience to sort of focus on you in your position and what you're saying and possibly the slides behind you. But I'm moving, confidently striding to different sort of locations on the stage. I won't do it all the time. I'll stay static sometimes, sort of maybe talk a little bit over here in this location about this topic and move confidently over to the other side to talk about this other topic over here. In my personal opinion, my rule of thumb, big audience, big space, do movement on stage, I encourage it. Whereas if I'm in a small sort of room, not massive audience, you know, a sort of small space, a couple of rows, and people can hear me and I don't need to sort of like talk quite loudly, right? Maybe I don't need a mic system, then I will encourage more to sort of not do too much movement. It's quite distracting. If I'm in a small space and I'm moving around a lot, it's quite distracting in that sort of scenario, I have found. Whereas if I'm more static and I use movement to sort of drive home points. So maybe I'm talking about topic A and I'll step forward a little bit more to really sort of drive it home. And when I've finished with it, I might take a step back. That's about the movement that I'd like for a sort of smaller, more intimate venue. Again, I'm not doing large movements. Sure, I can still do the odd movement to different locations on the stage, but I will do it less frequently than I would with a much larger hall, much larger audience. What I'm trying to say is movement is a very, very powerful tool when used correctly. Take water on stage with you. This is a super simple one, but a massive game changer. Back when I started doing presentations, I was often very nervous, and my nerves would sort of amalgamate into being a physical thing that would be a very dry throat. My throat, as the presentation got more and more, as I was talking, got drier and drier. It got to the point where it was a little bit uncomfortable for me to continue doing the presentation, and instead of my mind being focused on the presentation, my mind was going, oh, your throat's dry as well. That's weird. Oh, that's not very nice. Your throat's dry. And all that would be required to solve that is a quick drink of water. So I started taking a bottle of water onto the stage with me. Not only could I alleviate that dry throat, have a quick drink and I'm back ready to go, not worrying about the dryness of my throat, instead focusing on the presentation at hand, but there was an awesome extra side effect that I didn't realize until I started to do it. Taking a sip of water means that I had to stop my presentation. It let me pick up my bottle, take a sip, have a moment of peace and relaxation almost, and put it down and carry on. Now, I'm not advocating for you to sort of be on stage and just drinking, wasting everybody's time, but what I am advocating for is that if you're a little bit stressed, if things are going a little bit too fast, if you need a sort of stop button, if you need to hit the emergency brake for just a little bit of moment of peace to sort of gather yourself, refocus, and sort of come back even better than before, picking up this bottle, having a drink, taking a moment, just go, a quick sip of water, I can come back and I can hit the reset. I can go slow again. I can remember to use my volume to my advantage and my speed and my pauses. A bottle on stage is like a mini helpline. The audience isn't going to see you stopping your presentation and having a drink of water as, what the hell's this guy doing? What is this? Why is he drinking water? They're going to go, oh, he's drinking water. Great, cool. Just wait 2 seconds and he'll be back. And that's fine. And that's acceptable. You're human. You need water. But it gives you that brake pedal to take a moment to reset yourself and your mindset. To take a moment, even if you need to think, what was my next slide that I was doing? You know, it's normal for people to make mistakes and to forget things, so you can use the bottle of water technique as a pause to think, oh yeah, I need to talk about topic ABC next. Yes, that's the one, put it down, and the audience is none the wiser. Use emotional and descriptive words. So to start with, let me explain something. And again, not a doctor, not a psychologist. Humans have grown and evolved always with stories in their lives. That's the way that we commonly learned back before there was the internet and books. We would hear stories from our elders or whatever to inform us that, oh yes, big hairy cat with teeth, dangerous, dangerous. So we have grown and evolved with stories, and they are a really, really great way to learn things. If you haven't heard of it before, let me be the lucky one to tell you about something called the hero's journey, which is just an added little extra here, but it's a great framework for you to build a story out of whatever your topic is. I'm not going to go into detail with that, but I'll put links in the description below. If you want to read about the hero's journey, which will help you build a good story, then check out the links below. Anyway, but the point I'm trying to make is that stories are sort of built into us. They're part of who we are, and we learn really, really well by hearing and, understanding and having stories exposed to us. So that's the first part, but the second part of this tip is sort of related to stories, but it's more about accessing the human emotion of it all. You might have one of the driest topics of presentations that is humanly possible. And that's fine, because maybe it's informative, it's educational, it's going to help people in the long shot. But it might be quite dry, and it might be quite difficult to tell. I've had to deliver a bunch of these very, very dry presentations myself. And the way that I like to spice it up ever so slightly and bring a little bit more emotion into it is by adding descriptive and emotional words, sort of sprinkle them in to my presentation. Now, it won't change the content of what I'm trying to portray. Instead, it will just enhance it. It will add flavor, I suppose, sprinkling in these bits of spice. And it doesn't need to be drastic or over the top, but adding emotional and descriptive words into your dry presentation might engage your audience, which is just basically a group of humans that have emotions as well. And if they can engage in something, they rehook themselves back into your dry presentation, then that's a bonus. Let me give you an example to highlight it. If I'm talking about topic A, and I want to try and portray that topic A is like brilliant, groundbreaking, they need this in their life. Actually, that's probably quite a good selective words, but instead of saying, here's topic A, the benefits of topic A are that it's faster deployment, better efficiency, quicker feedback loops or whatever, which is fine, but that's very sort of data driven. And we're humans, we like emotion and description and stuff like that. So instead, I can of course say those things, and I should say those points, those data points, but I can add flavor, I can add spice to it. I can say like, this is a fantastic piece of equipment, and this is absolutely groundbreaking for me. Without this, I couldn't do half of the things I do. I can even take it as far as saying, oh, this is delicious. This piece of software, groundbreaking. I think I've done that a couple of times on stage. And it's just something that, instead of just sort of boring, sort of blah, 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 it brings a bit of humanity and emotion into it. I'm describing it in a way that sort of makes people like, hungry for the information. They want to listen, they want to take it in. They're like, oh, wow, it's done all of those brilliant emotional benefit things for him. Maybe it'll do the same for me. It's sort of, I'm not advocating for this, but it's sort of a little bit like a salesman, They don't just say, here's a vacuum cleaner, you need it to hoover dust up. They talk about the emotion of it. They talk about how this is life-changing, how it makes everything easier. And bringing it back to the stories part, that's why stories are so powerful to us, because they actually connect with the human within us. They make us understand the emotions that were involved. Yes, they'll teach us that big hairy cat with teeth is dangerous not to go near, but the story enables us to understand why from a humanity point of view. It will hurt, it will make us sad, all of these sort of things, and that's why stories are so, so powerful. Again, check out the hero's journey as a way to build a story from your sort of topic use case. So this is a bonus tip that sort of applies to our new world and way of living since the pandemic, and we're doing a lot of working from home and remote video conferences. Here's one very, very quick, easy tip that I love and use all the time. When you're in a meeting and you need to share your screen, or you have just turned your microphone on, or it's your turn to talk, you'll often start with something like, can you hear me? Can somebody say yes if they see my screen? Which makes sense because we're not seeing a bunch of audience in front of us. We're often seeing just user icons, no videos turned on, or sometimes videos turned on and we can't see them because our screen has changed, or we're presenting something. We can't get any information that people are seeing what we see or hear what we are saying. And that line now to me is like nails on a chalkboard. I hate it. Can you see my screen? Can you hear what I'm saying? Can you see my screen? I hate it because then they'll sort of wait for somebody to panic and turn their microphone on and be the one of 4 people that is going, yep, we can hear you, which is fine, but there's a better way, let me tell you. Instead of asking a question that requires an answer, instead make a statement. This is your statement. I'm going to share my screen now. Somebody interrupt me if you can't see it, and then keep moving. You're not stopping your flow, your presentation, to wait for a response. Instead, if there is genuine technical troubles, which might happen, somebody at some point will speak up as you're going and interrupt you, and then you can fix the problem. Instead of, can you see my screen? And waiting, you can just say, I'm sharing my screen now, somebody interrupt me if you can't see it, and then keep moving. So those are my tips to...
Can you help me quickly?
Yep, coming. 2 seconds. I'll be right back. 2 seconds, don't move. I'll be right back. What's up? What's happening? Okay, let me help. Let me lift that. Let me pick that up. Hang on. Don't move. I got it. It's all good. Goodness. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry. Right, I'm back. Oh, where was I? Anyway, that was the collection of tips to help you become a better presenter. Try and use as many of them together as you can to enhance your presentation skills. But I guarantee that even if you only use just one of those tips, you will become a better presenter. And that's it. Thank you again to all of you that are supporting me and helping me grow this channel. It genuinely means so much to me, you can't even imagine. Thank you so much for the 3,000 subscriber milestone. Of course, if you haven't already, consider hitting that subscribe button if you want to be part of this crazy growth and community. And don't forget to ding that bell icon if you want to be notified about when I release new videos. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Ben_Kadel. Thanks for watching. See you next time. This is weird, I haven't done a video in so long. These shadows are really quite drastic. Slippers off. It's about to get real. Let's do a big snap. It's to truly and deeply connect, understand, engage. Oh, did I just pull my mic out? Did I? I didn't, hopefully did it. Did I just pull my mic out? I don't think I did. It's still recording. That's great news. I can't moonwalk, so I'm just me. I'm going backwards. Find it. Nice. Ooh, you even got an extra bonus tip in there. Bothered to cook tonight, so that's going to be amazing. I just need to get my camera equipment. I'll just get on in a minute. I'll just tear it down and I'll be right back with you.